Fellas, if this was a manga, we'd be entering our school festival arc, cause the Trinity Festival has arrived to Blue Archive Global in the form of the new event, Serenade Promenade, and with it comes the new limited 3-star units, Idol Mari and Idol Sakurako, as well as Idol Mine, who is the event's welfare unit. In this video, we will be taking a look at both Idol Sakurako and Idol Mine, whereas Idol Mari has been reviewed in a separate video. The link to it will be in the pinned comment. Anyways, without further ado, here is a short review of the two idol girls. Giggity, giggity boys! I have been waiting for this moment a long time, cause our clumsy, scary, beautiful nun is here in a new idol outfit. It's Idol Sakurako. I've always really liked Sakurako a lot, mainly due to her gap moe personality and that silver hair, not to mention Wappy. But she has shot up in my rankings with that idol outfit. Forgive me, my Gehenna bros, but the allure of the nuns, it's calling to me. Idol Sakurako, nay, Sakurako-sama, is my favorite among the idol girls, my Oshi so to speak, to the point where I'm prioritizing pulling her over Idol Mari and ignoring the meta. For one, I love the black ensemble she's rocking, from the elegant sleeveless black dress flaunting her mommy milkers and armpits, to the adorable top hat, and those black tights that show off those luscious legs. Good lord, I ain't Christian, but I might have to go to Trinity's church to confess my sins. Finally, we gotta talk about her L2D. Good golly gumdrops, I'm about to get a heart attack. Her panicked, embarrassed expression is too fucking cute. And that Wappy pose alone is strong enough to convert me to the Sakurako religion. It's so goddamn adorable. Whoa, I can't get enough Sakurako-sama! 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 Now, what kind of student is Idol Sakurako-sama? Well, she is a limited explosive striker supporter who has yellow armor, with her terrain moods being the exact same as Idol Mari's. D combat power in urban terrains, S combat power in field, and B combat power in indoor terrains. She wears these equipment, gloves, pin and watch, which is pretty similar to a bunch of other striker supporters too. Let's go over her skills. Idol Sakurako-sama's 3-cost EX increases the crit and crit damage of all special students and her own self for 17 seconds, while her basic skill, which procs every 35 seconds, boosts her attack as well as her attack speed for 25 seconds. Her enhanced skill further ups her attack, and with a sub-skill, she once again increases hers and your special student's crit damage. At UA 40, she gains additional buff retention on her enhanced skill plus, and at UA 50, her field combat power upgrades from S to SS. So, how good is Idol Sakurako? Well, as you can tell from her kit, she is primarily a strong hyper buffer for special students, being one of the few units in the game so far who has this role, as well as the only currently dedicated crit buffer for them, making her very similar to Akko, albeit the latter targets striker students. Firstly, with her potent EX skill, she is able to increase your special units and her own crit and crit damage by 24.2% and 45% respectively at level 5 EX, for the pretty low cost of 3, massively boosting their damage output. While her buff values might not seem like a lot on paper, in a weird way it's kind of like an AoE buff like Dress Akko's, it's actually very valuable, considering that she is the sole unit in the game right now who can provide crit and crit damage buffs to your special students through EX skills. Plus her buffs are still strong enough to allow them to shred through the enemy. Also, despite her EX being able to buff her own self, it isn't that important since she is a supporter whose role isn't to deal damage, and her EX's buffs don't actually affect TS students since most of them scale off attack, excluding Swimsuit Ayane, who is the only TS unit who will benefit from Sakurako's buff. Moving on, Idol Sakurako's basic skill increases both her attack and attack speed by 30.1% at max level skill for a decent amount of time at 25 seconds, with this skill having a 35-second proc time, meaning there is a 10-second downtime between activations after the initial one. While these are good damage self buffs, again, they aren't exactly a priority for her since her damage output isn't important. Same goes for her enhanced skill. It increases her attack, which isn't significant. However, at UA 40, she gains an additional 19% buff retention, extending her EX's buff's duration to 20 seconds and her basics to about 30 seconds. This extra buff time is pretty useful since it allows your special DPS units to activate their EX skill twice throughout the increased buff duration, which may be necessary for those senseis who know how to min-max / want to speedrun raids. Nevertheless, while this is a decent investment, 3-star Idol Sakurako is usually more than enough. Finally, we have her sub skill, which passively increases hers and your special students' crit damage by 30.6% at max level skill. And this can actually stack on top of the regular universal crit damage buff sub skill that Ako and others have. So combine all these together and Idol Sakurako is able to increase your special students' crit and crit damage by 24.2% and 92.9% respectively. Not to mention pairing her with units like Swimsuit Saki and Swimsuit Kana, who can boost their attack through their sub, essentially turns your special DPS units into monsters, capable of destroying the enemy. Now, where can Idol Sakurako be used in? Well, while she is a core unit for special hyper carry focused teams, unfortunately, there currently isn't much content that really necessitates this team comp, excluding the new Gebura raid, which is currently where she shines the most. She has become an essential and vital unit for this particular boss, as she helps fulfill part of its mechanics. In this raid, all striker students and TS vehicles deal 75% less damage, though their cost recurve is boosted by 25%, while special units deal 80% more damage. So, your usual explosive striker damage dealers like Dress Hina, Aru, etc. aren't exactly effective for this boss, and you will need to utilize raid special DPS units like Satsuki, Hibiki, Camp Maki, Uniform Karin, Mashiro, Swimsuit Fubuki, and others. Hence, this has allowed Idol Sakurako to become an absolutely important unit for this raid, with most senseis bringing her in their team for almost every difficulty, as her EXs and sub-skills buffs will massively boost your special DPS units' damage output, allowing you to clear the raid faster. Not to mention, she was also almost often used in tandem with School Uniform Asuna, who is similar to Sakurako except her buffs are attack focused and she has some healing capabilities on her basic. Thus, by combining their buffs together results in special hyper carries like Satsuki deleting his health faster, letting you clear the raid more smoothly. And you actually need to use both of them, preferably in the same team, in order to have an easier time in this raid while being able to one-punch Gebura, especially on Insane, and have a fighting chance on Torment and especially Lunatic. Moving on, outside of Gebura, Idol Sakurako honestly doesn't see much use elsewhere due to the lack of content that requires special DPS focused teams. Excluding specific joint firing drills that increase special students' damage as part of their mechanics, and in very niche Gregorius teams that utilize units like Minori or Swimsuit Miyu as their main hyper carry. So you'd partner her with Nagisa and Swimsuit Saki in order to fully boost their damage. Though during the last Greg raid in JP, this team comp wasn't very popular, with most senseis still opting for the old reliable Dress Hina hyper carry strat. That being said, in the future, perhaps these teams will become more popular in Greg, what with the introduction of Uniform Asuna, as well as the new Lunatic difficulty, which would most likely call for more teams, as I doubt Dress Hina will be able to one-punch it, meaning Idol Sakurako's pick rate might see a substantial increase. This applies to other raids as well once Lunatic debuts on them, where you can use Idol Sakurako in a special DPS comp for one of your Lunatic teams, or on other difficulties if you're struggling. So, while she might not have a lot of use so far, perhaps she will become more valuable in the future. So overall, should you pull for Idol Sakurako? Well, in my opinion, it really depends. On one hand, you may pull for her if you want to have a smoother time in the Gebura raid, or for any possible future value, i.e. if you want to have her just in case you plan to have a team focus on special units for raids. You may also pull for her since she is limited, and we don't know when her next rerun will be, or as always, if she is your waifu. On the other hand, I personally feel you may skip her if you don't really care about Gebura, or you have someone in your club/friends list to borrow Idol Sakurako from, or perhaps you don't care about Idol Sakurako and prefer to pull for Idol Mari instead. Maybe because you don't have enough Paroxenes to afford both, or maybe Mari is your waifu, or if you're pulling for meta, as Idol Mari is technically more useful/important than Sakurako. Regardless though, whether you pull for her mainly depends on your situation and preference, seeing that she isn't considered a must-have student while at the same time being a good specialized unit. Nevertheless, if you're like me and you want this adorable Wappi coded L2D, then go ahead and pull for her. Now, it's time to move on to our hot Captain Kivotos and Masomami Hamas's. It's Idomine. Good golly gumdrops, fellas. If you thought she was already all caked up in a regular version, her idol form is the whole fucking bakery. Now, I really like Mine, mainly cause she is pretty, hot, and adorable. Plus her light blue hair reminds me of Black Panties aka Saki Kawasaki from Oregairu. Best girl by the way. But my interest in her has definitely shot up with her idol version cause it looks fantastic. Not only are those big calcium cannons more prominent and on full display, my god, I don't know how those buttons are holding them together. But that top hat looks extra cute on her too. Plus her armpits are way more accentuated in her idol outfit. God, just imagine the smell and taste of those sweaty, smelly pits once she's done with dance practice. There's also her short skirt flaunting off those majestic thighs and legs. And finally, those giant beautiful blue wings that can put me in a warm embrace after she's done beating me up. We also have her L2D, which really showcases her gap moe, proving that Mine can get shy and embarrassed too, especially in Sensei's presence. And man, I am all for it. So, what type of student is Idomine? Well, she is mainly a welfare explosive tank who wears heavy armor, and for her terrain moods, she has B combat power in all 3 terrains. She rocks shoes, bag and amulet for her equipment, all of which helps with her tanking capabilities. Time to take a look at her skills. With her 3-course EX, she leaps high up in the air, relocating to a designated location, while increasing her attack speed for 30 seconds and gaining 5 penlight stacks, going up to a max of 30. She then summons a stage set at the location she repositioned to, moving up to 3 allies to it, also increasing their attack speed for the same duration. Her basic skill, which activates every 30 seconds, consumes penlight stacks in multiples of 10, dealing damage to one enemy while decreasing their attack for 20 seconds, with the damage and attack buff values dependent on the number of penlight stacks consumed. Her enhanced skill boosts her HP, and through her sub-skill, she accumulates penlight stacks equal to the amount of skill costs used by allies, excluding herself. Plus, for every 10 penlight stacks she gains, she increases her defense for 20 seconds, though this effect cannot stack. Her enhanced skill plus at UA40 further provides her with additional HP, and her field combat power converts from B to A at UA50. So, how good is Idomine? Well, she is currently the only welfare tank that we've gotten so far, and for a welfare unit, she is actually pretty good, having the highest attack stat among all the tanks in the game, though despite being a tank, her HP and defense are pretty low. Not only that, she is mainly used as a repositioner, and this is due to her cheap 3-cost EX skill. With it, she repositions to a specified location, summoning a stage set at wherever she lands, and moving 3 other units to its location. Throughout this process, she increases her own and all 3 report students' attack speed by 24.7% at max level skill, with this buff lasting for 30 seconds, while granting herself 5 penlight stacks, of which she can hold up to a max of 30. Think of her EX like track Yukas, since both of theirs are repo EXs that have the same cost and range, except it doesn't provide a shield but rather an attack speed buff. While this buff is quite decent, especially for auto-attacking units, it's more of a bonus as her EX is instead primarily used for its repositioning ability to move your units out of danger, as well as to gain more penlight stacks. Next, her basic skill consumes penlight stacks in multiples of 10 every 30 seconds, dealing damage and decreasing one enemy's attack for 20 seconds, with the values dependent on the number of penlights consumed. 0 stacks has the lowest multipliers, having a 333% damage multiplier and applying a 21.7% attack down debuff, and 30 penlight stacks, which is the max, allows Mine to deal decent damage with its 904% multiplier and reduce the enemy's attack by 28.2%. This potent debuff is actually really useful, as it helps boost your team's survivability by directly decreasing the damage done to them by the enemy, which is especially helpful against hard-hitting bosses. So, you would ideally want her to have max penlight stacks before she procs this skill, though even at 0 stacks, the debuff is already fairly good. Aside from that, both her enhanced and enhanced skill plus increase her max HP, with the latter being extra important, especially especially in harder content, cause again, she has pretty low base HP, plus she doesn't have any self-recovery or shooting abilities in her kit, so having this huge additional max HP can massively improve her survivability. Lastly, we have a sub-skill, which allows her to obtain a penlight stack equal to the amount of skill cost consumed by other allies. So for instance, use a 2-cost EX, she gains 2 penlight stacks. Thus with this, she can easily and consistently accumulate penlight stacks for her basic, and you would ideally want to use your other student's EX skills or her EX, cause remember, hers give 5 stacks before her basic triggers, so that she can gather the max number of penlight stacks and reduce the enemy's attack by a lot before they launch a devastating attack. One more thing, every time she obtains 10 penlight stacks, she increases her defense by 22.9% for 20 seconds, which is also pretty useful for her survivability, seeing that she also has low base defense. All in all, Idomine is a solid repositioning tank who can slightly increase your student's attack speed and more importantly, improve your team's survivability by applying a potent attack down debuff onto one enemy, with this skill differentiating her from the other tanks in the game. Now let's look at her users. Given that she is a repo tank, she should in theory be good for content that require repositioners like Shirokuro and Gauss, right? Well, not exactly. For the former, she sadly takes 2 times damage from their piercing attacks on Insane and above, as she is part of the plethora of yellow armored tanks in the game, though I suppose you may use her on the lower difficulties if you need to. While for the latter, even though she receives normal damage from his explosive attacks, shields are a must-have for this boss, as well as Shirokuro too. So while her attack speed buff can help boost the damage of your AA units like Shiroko Terror in these raids, Track Yuka is still the preferred tank repo option, as she can provide powerful shields and have more survivability. But don't let that stop you from using Idomine if you need an alternative for the lower difficulties / extra option for one of your teams if necessary. Instead, she has seen a ton of use and is considered meta for Gebura, being brought into many sensei's teams. This is because in this raid on Insane and above, your units will gain a hypothermia gauge, which increases by 1 every 5 seconds if they don't move. And if this gauge hits 10, your student will be frozen, rendering them immobile as they can't move or act. And they will also be inflicted with an 80% incoming damage debuff plus a recovery limit debuff, reducing all HP restored to them by 1. So you will need repositioners like Idomine to occasionally move your students to ensure their hypothermia gauges reset and don't fully fill up. Plus, she is one of the best repositioners for this raid since she resists his blue attacks, and she can also help reduce his exorbitant attack through her basic skill, increasing your team's chances of surviving his powerful attacks. Hence, all these have made Idomine a massively valuable unit for this raid, with her being used in most players' teams, mainly on Insane to Lunatic, seeing that this mechanic is only present on these difficulties. So overall, should you farm for Idomine? In my opinion, yes, you should at least try to get her to UE30 or better yet UE40 if possible, cause the additional max HP she gains will greatly improve her survivability. Though from what I've seen, UE30 is sufficient for Gebura even on Lunatic. Even if you're not interested in taking on Gebura too seriously, you should at least get her to 3 stars in order to unlock that useful sub-skill. I mean, it's simple enough to get her a labs this time, just grind for event points and buy them from the shop. If she is your waifu though, then go ahead and farm for her elapse until the max if you want to. And that's all for this review. Again, keep in mind that the Idomari review is already up on the channel in a separate video. I'll leave the link to it in the pinned comment. Anyways, let me know who you're pulling for if you are. Good luck with your pulls and see you tomorrow.